I'm Kevin Maguire, and is it now stop the bets for Rishi Sunak as gambling scandals engulf the Tories? Labour's got huge poll leads, huge. So is it time to focus on what they will do in government? And Rachel Reeves said she'll end the gender pay cap. Can she? Stop the bets, not the boats. Could you believe it, that in the middle of a general election campaign, there is a gambling scandal engulfing the Conservative Party? First of all, you have a Tory candidate, was an MP, closest parliamentary aide to Rishi Sunak, Craig Williams, standing again in Montgomeryshire. He admits placing a bet on the timing of the general election. That surprise announcement of the early election. Then you find that a candidate in Bristol North West, Laura Saunders is her name. She's under investigation by the Gambling Commission. Then there's a police officer, a gun guard, close to Rishi Sunak. He's under investigation. And now we have Laura Saunders' husband, Tony Lee, Director of Campaigns at Tory HQ, taking leave of absence in the middle of the campaign because he appears to be under investigation too. Now, we mustn't rush to judgment ahead of an inquiry, although Williams has admitted he was unwise. But does it mean the Conservative Party is going to be remembered for allegations of sleaze? Not a good position for Rishi Sunak to be in. Well, tonight we're joined, I'm delighted to say, by Christina McAnea, General Secretary of Unison, Britain's biggest union, very important in public services, has a section affiliated to the Labour Party. And Christina, you join us from your union's annual conference in Brighton. Welcome.
Thank you.
And are you surprised at these allegations, these betting allegations against the 4 people now, 3 of them prominent Conservatives?
I mean, you do have to think, you couldn't make this up, could you? And what on earth were people thinking? As you say, don't rush to judgment, etc. But even the very fact of wanting to place a bet at this particular time or that time, when it would look like they've got knowledge of what was going on, or at least, they could make a very good informed guess of what was going on. It just seems such a mad thing for them to do. And clearly, I'm guessing none of them made huge amounts of money out of it. It's not, so they didn't do it for that. But it just seems so bizarre that people would do that and risk their political future for it.
Yeah, the winnings would have been £200 or more each, because the Gambling Commission asked for a trawl of all bets where the return would be over more than £199. But as you say, if it's not unlawful, it's immoral.
Oh, it's definitely immoral. And it just confirms that feeling that certainly I have, and I know lots of the people in Unison would think, I'm sure lots of people listening would think this, that over the past few years, we've seen the Tories behave so badly, like the kinds of things they did during the lockdown, that it's that kind of feeling that they're above the law, and that things like, the moral standards that most of us live by don't seem to apply to them. And whether they did it or not, that's the image that you take away from something like this, is that they genuinely do feel nothing like this applies. There's no restrictions on what they can and can't do. It's like they can do anything they want.
Christina, you've seen the poll leads, and you've got a union that's campaigning for a Labour government. Poll leads, 3 big polls, leads of 162 for Labour, majority of 200, a majority of 382. Now, I know you'll say it's not in the bag until people vote a fortnight today. I know you will. But presumably, your minds are turning increasingly into what you want from a Labour government in power.
Well, we've already started those talks when we were discussing the manifesto with them, because as an affiliated union, we're part of that discussion. So, yeah, we've got a fairly clear idea of the things that we want to see them, if they get into power, we want to see them actually carrying through. And, you won't be surprised at this. We are the biggest union, but we're also most of our members work in public services. So the big thing we want to see is more investment in public services. And the case we're making for that is that even though the economy's, been practically destroyed by the Tories in the past few years, actually there is still money. We still need to have public services, and that public services drive the economy. And that's a case we're continually making to the Labour Party, is don't see it as a drain in the economy, see it as a driver of the economy. So that's one of the key ones for us. I think they will face a massive problem in some of the big sectors. So you've seen the big, the waiting lists, there's still all the problems in the NHS. But I think one of the first crises they may have to deal with is in local government, where local government leaders are saying 1 in 5 of them expect to go bankrupt within 15 months. Now that's, if Labour get in now, that means a year from now, they're facing a major problem in local authorities. So they will have to deal with that. And the other big thing for us that we have been pushing for, it was a bit of a personal crusade of mine, is for a national care service, and not just a national care service, but actually a proper pay agreement for the staff who work in that sector. So what we've got a commitment from the party is for a fair pay agreement. So that would be us discussing and negotiating with the employers in the sector what pay should look like for the workers in the care service. That, I think, could be a total life changer, not just for the people who work there, but for the people who depend on those services. So that's a big thing for us to push for that.
Expectations will be high. Is it important there are early wins for people like your good self, the workers you represent, and the government, the Labour government comes in and it makes a statement of intent, rather than drift setting in pretty early?
Oh, definitely. And I think if they get a big majority, or even a good working majority, one of the things they should do is try and get as much as they can in while they're in that kind of honeymoon period. Government's honeymoon periods don't tend to last very long, in my experience. So I think they should come in and be quite bold in the first, well, we're saying the first 100 days. There are a number of things we are pushing them to do within the first 100 days. I know other organisations and other parts of the economy will be pushing for the same thing. But they have given certain commitments about what will come in the first 100 days, about improving workers' rights, the fair pay agreement, and a range of other things. And so, yeah, expectations are high, but also I think it's tinged with a bit of realism. As I certainly, I made my sort of big set piece speech to my conference yesterday, and one of the things I said to them was, Labour's going to inherit a mess. Don't expect them to be able to turn the economy around very quickly. And that some of the big picture things that we're calling for, like a national care service, won't be delivered overnight. This will take a number of years. And what I want to see is Labour in power, not just for one term, but for at least 2 terms, and maybe even longer, but certainly 2 terms, because that way, I think you could actually start to plan to make our society, a fairer society, and to try and redress some of the problems that they're going to inherit that's been left by the 14 years of Tory chaos.
So is it all about direction of travel? Because, as you say, you're a professional negotiator, you're pragmatic, you're practical, but nevertheless you have a vision where you want it to go. And Keir Starmer says he's got no magic wand, but I sometimes wonder if he needs to be a magician to actually change Britain in the way it needs, given what he inherits. But is it all about the direction of travel? He's got to show life is improving for people in the country, for people who work in the country, for public services, for the nation as a whole. Yeah,
I mean, there is huge. People, I think, have seen what's happened. Everybody waits ages for a GP appointment. They're on waiting lists for sort of fairly routine operations. You take your child to the A&E department. You're sitting there for 12 hours. People want to see all of that improved. They want the commitment on childcare to be brought in. There's loads of things that people will be expecting the Labour Party to do to change society. And what I'm hoping is that not just some of these big things, but actually that the cultural, that kind of toxic culture that we've seen from the Tories will change as well under Labour. So we've seen all the sort of the way the Tories like to demonise certain groups in society, even though it's not them that have caused the problems. It's not it's not the people coming across in small boats that have caused all the problems in society. It's people who have been draining the economy for money for years. It's the corruption that we've seen for years. And I think if Labour could just shift that cultural bit a little bit, that could make a significant difference to the way people feel about society and where we live and what kind of country we want to live in. So as well as specifics, I really do hope that we'll see that kind of change as well.
How do you think? How would you like the relationship to be between people like your good self and the people you represent, and Keir Starmer and Labour ministers? Back in the Blair years, John Monks, who was then TUC General Secretary, said trade union leaders, when they were meeting Blair and some of those close to him, felt like embarrassing elderly relatives. Kind of wanted the money, but then they wanted to be dropped off around the corner for the party, not to be seen and so on. How will you? Do you think it's different? I mean, I've not detected any hostility to trade unions from Keir Starmer, who seems to be very relaxed with people like yourself, which by Blair always felt a bit more distant.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really know Tony Blair. I was too junior in the organisation to be at these kind of prestigious meetings. I'd say that Keir genuinely does believe in things like the New Deal for workers. That's certainly what I feel. Angie's had to push hard to make sure that we get certain things in, but I haven't detected anything from him which says he's trying to pull away from it or backtrack on it. Clearly, he's then got the people who want to run the Treasury, Rachel and Pat McFadden, and quite rightly saying we have to have a really tight economic fiscal policy to go in to look credible to the country. So I get that, but I don't. Some of the things that we are calling for in terms of a new deal for working people won't necessarily cost that much, any money, never mind much money. It will be about changing some of the legislation that's out there to make things, to update where we are in this country. I mean, the Tories consistently refuse to even let trade unions use electronic balloting, for example. Now, the only reason they did that was because they knew it would make life difficult for us and would cost money. There was absolutely no reason the Tories couldn't have brought in electronic balloting. So that's a simple little thing that means a lot to unions, because it means we can engage much better with our members. We can hear from them in a much quicker way than having to send them a piece of paper in the mail and them having to send it back to us. And I don't think a lot of people realise that that's still the antiquated system we have to operate with. So things like that won't cost them anything. But will make a difference to the way we can operate with our members. And then other things like, a fair pay agreement has got the potential to obviously, will have some financial implications. Bringing down waiting lists, investing in staff in the NHS, all of those things will cost money. But I don't feel that resentment. I think he does come across as someone who wants to work with the unions. I've said for years that unions should be part of the social fabric of society. Why would a government only consult with businesses when unions like mine represent 1.3 million members? Why aren't we being called in when there's big decisions being taken? I think we have a lot to offer, and I hope we'll get that opportunity with a Labour government.
Christina, you mentioned Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, seemingly destined to be the Chancellor. She talked about ending the gender pay gap in Britain, 14.3% difference in earnings between men and women. I mean, that's an enormous, persistent gap. You as a union must have spent a small fortune fighting on behalf of women workers, the majority of your members. Do you think she can actually close it legally, or will it always require industrial battles by unions like your own?
Well, there's things they can do to make the legislation a bit easier, because just now you can't bring class actions, for example. That kind of thing could make life a bit easier for working people. And it is also about the attitude that employers have towards jobs traditionally done by women. What she could, I think she can change things, but what needs to happen is investment in some of those jobs. So I'll give you an example. We've been running a big campaign. We call it Fair Pay for Patient Care. No, pay fair for patient care. Sorry, it's a bit of a mouthful. But what it means is we've been going into hospitals and saying, we've got a group of staff here who are healthcare assistants. They've been doing this job for X number of 10 years. But actually over that 10 years, their job has changed and they now do far more complex work than they did when they started 10 years ago. But their pay hasn't kept pace with that. So we've gone in with it sounds a bit dull, Kevin, if I'm honest, but like regrading claims, we call them. But in the past year, we've got over 70 million in back pay for our members who work as healthcare assistants. That's huge. Yeah. That's life-changing for some people. But what it also means is they're able to do more detailed, complex jobs within the NHS. And what I think Rachel has to do and the government have to do is, because the way to end the gender pay gap, in my view, is to start to recognise that jobs that are seen as traditionally women's work if you can change attitudes towards that, pay them properly for the job they're doing, that can have a significant impact in reducing the gender pay gap.
No, that's great. Yeah, but pay people fairly. A fair day's pay for a fair day's work. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, Christina McAnea, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you everybody for watching. We'll be in the same place, same time on Monday on Pole Position. Have a good weekend when it arrives.
Thank you.